The Conservatives could have been using this whole trade war that Carney is waging against the US as a leverage point for themselves, but they've decided to put their elbows up, except for one or two people, one of them being Jamil Jivani, who is now being called to leave the Conservative Party because of his different stance.
Now, a party election broadcast by the Conservative Party.
First, let's start with Bruce McGonigal saying, quote, Pierre Poilievre delivers a grim report on the suffering of Canadians. This begs the question, with food prices so high, why are our dairy farmers dumping up to 1 billion liters of milk every year? If you wanted to bring down food prices, wasting 1 billion liters of high-quality Canadian milk is the exact opposite of helping. Exactly.
Well, Pierre Poilievre has it bang on the money. The problem is he's saying you have to wait 2 to 3 more years for another election so you can vote for me so I can make the changes. Alberta Independent says, no, we're going to make the changes. We have a grassroots movement that's almost identical to a lot of the things Pierre Poilievre is saying. A lot of the things Pierre Poilievre actually liberalizes on, Alberta Independents won't liberalize on. We're going to make the change for ourselves on October 19th.
Our people have suffered enough over the last 10 years. Raging inflation has made it impossible for many to afford groceries. Single mothers are forced to turn back items at the grocery checkout because their bank accounts empty before their grocery carts do. An entire generation of youth is shut out of home ownership as we have the most expensive housing in the G7. And then there's the people who have to empty their bank to fill up their tank because of high gas prices. Factories have moved south. Jobs have left the country. 30 mills have already closed in British Columbia. The people who used to donate to our food banks are now forced to take donations because they can't pay their bills. And now the highest number of insolvencies since the Great Global Recession means that families are literally selling their homes and assets to pay their mortgages as they toss a turn at night, wondering if they might have to declare bankruptcy.
Well, it's great he knows the problems of Canada because everybody can see it at this point, but he doesn't have a solution because he doesn't have any actual power. Alberta Independence does. The people can now make the change for themselves. They no longer have to trust in the politicians.
And also with Pierre Poilievre, everything he says is bang on the money. I mean, it's right that Canada is sinking. It's right that a lot of people are suffering. And yet he decided to go along with the elbows up tactic when he could have used it as leverage for himself and as a way to differentiate himself from the Liberals and from Carney.
One thing I'll say here, I'm glad people of Alberta aren't trusting in Pierre Poilievre anymore. They've kind of seen through that. We're going to show in the second half of this segment what's happening with the PQ and how they're betraying the independence movement of Quebec.
And as I was saying regarding Jamil Jivani, for example, Ari Erasmus says, quote, fire Jamil Jivani now, saying that there's a petition to Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Parliamentary Caucus saying that we, the undersigned, call on Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Parliament to immediately expel Jamil Jivani from the caucus.
Yeah, and you can leave this up here. This was all over the internet. I just grabbed one of them. There was other ones that had a ton of likes, a ton of comments, things like this. This is absolutely ridiculous. Jamil Jivani is, for a politician, the best you're going to get at this point. He actually has a relationship with J.D. Vance. Maybe you should be leveraging that instead of going to war with the Americans. But I guess if your goal is to interfere in the midterms, you're going to want Jamil Jivani out.
This is a change.org petition, which I mean is taking things a little bit seriously at this point. But to further explain, Paulette Banana says, quote, I never said treason, but don't believe me. Here's what JD himself had to say, saying, quote, saying Prime Minister Mark Carney tried to out-tough U.S. President Donald Trump while crediting his longtime friend, Conservative MP Jamil Jivani, as a helpful advocate for Canada.
Well, and leave this picture up there. They've been friends for a long, long time. This is something that you should use to your benefit, not try to get rid of the one guy that actually has a long-standing real friendship with the Vice President of the United States, who's very likely to be the future President of the United States.
But it also shows why these tactics from the Conservatives that are looking exactly almost the same as the elbows up technique that Mark Carney has been using isn't going to lead them anywhere, because they could be the party that wants to negotiate with the U.S., wants to improve the relationship, wants to mend it. And yet well, all we hear from Pierre Poilievre, all we hear from the rest of the Conservatives, mostly, also the commentators, is no, we also have to put our elbows up. No, we also have to hate on the U.S.
Well, they're saying we have to have a Canada first approach. That means dollar for dollar tariffs, this and that. Jamil Jivani is one of the few politicians in Canada that has a different outlook on it and actually has a relationship with the vice president. The only other politician is Danielle Smith, and you have to question those motivations. It seems like she's in the Federalist pockets right now, and she's taking an opposite stance only because she doesn't want to push more people towards polling for independence on October 19th.
And yet you're not allowed to mention it or even try to do what makes the most sense at this point, especially for a conservative party in Canada. But on the other side, all the way over to the east, Western Standard says, quote, Parti Québécois vows no referendum while Trump remains president.
Yeah, and the PQ is absolutely looking dazed and confused these days. They're not looking like the normal PQ, and it looks like they're getting real friendly with the federal government. They were claiming they were going to have an independence referendum really quick off of the bat. That would have set a lot of good precedents. Now they're saying, well, not till after Trump is gone. They don't know how to deal with this. This used to be a good, confident young leader. This is why you do not put your trust in politicians. This is why Alberta independence went down that road before of trusting in politicians. And this time we said, no, this is a citizen-led grassroots movement, and we're going to make the change for ourselves. We're not going to trust in Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney, Doug Ford, the PQ, you name it. The politicians are on that side. It's the citizens on this side, and the citizens are fighting for freedom.
But it's almost ridiculous that many people within Canada, including its own politicians, know more and care more about U.S. politics, which just shows the actual influence that the U.S. has and how important it really is for the Canadian economy and for Canadians just in general. But it's insane that they care more and know more about U.S. politics than they do about what's happening in their own country or why things are happening or asking for transparency on the trade negotiations that broke down, for example. No, they won't ask for that, but they'll ask to wait until Trump is out of office because apparently he's that important for Quebec's independence movement. However, Mark Nixon says that's the entire problem. The Parti Québécois says the French language was not being threatened in the U.S. trade negotiations. How would Canadians know? We haven't seen the deal.
And we can go right into the clip here. I mean, he looks dazed and confused. 1 minute he's saying, no, the New York Times is saying this. We don't know what's going on. Yeah, we know what's going on with the PQ right now. You're saying, oh, we're not going to have a referendum on independence. This is why the people are supporting you in the first freaking place. And there's all kinds of deals going on behind the scenes with a lot of investment coming from the federal government directly into Quebec. And now all of a sudden, you don't want to have an independence referendum. And this is why Alberta independence had the right outlook right from the beginning. Let the citizens fight for freedom, no longer trust in the politicians.
This is a leader of the Parti Québécois, the more independence party within Quebec, Pierre Saint-Pierre Plamondon.
We learned this morning in the New York Times that the French language in terms of having products in French were not at stake according to that article. So, as Yves-François Blanchette just mentioned before me, there's an obligation to say the truth when you speak about important things like that. But what it tells in terms of Quebec politics is that Christine Fréchette told Trump no way about the French language, but actually her own Minister of Culture cannot tell anymore what's true because nobody's at the table. We don't have the information yet. It is our interest at stake, and that's a problem.
And he just looks like a politician. He used to be a young, charismatic, confident politician. He looks like he has no confidence. I think backroom deals have been made at this point. He should be calling out the federal government directly, not mada, 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 mada. Oh, we don't know what's going on. No. Say it like it is. The federal government needs to release what went on in those trade negotiations, number one, and he needs to be talking about independence. He's talking about the opposite of independence. Oh, we can't have any independence until Trump's gone. Trump has nothing to do with Quebec's independence, period.
And with the lack of transparency coming from the federal government, from the Mark Carney Liberals, but also with the lack of interest even from the Conservatives in saying, well, release the deal, with Pierre Poilievre just still complaining, but also putting his elbows up, now with people wanting to fire Jamil Jivani because he is trying to have a relationship with the U.S., or at least thinking that that might be a good idea. This is all getting insane, and this is why a lot of Canadians have fully lost hope at this point, except for Alberta, that can get its independence soon. But don't forget to subscribe again, it really does help us out, and like the video.